Genetically modified organisms, you take genes from one species and force it into the DNA of other species. Now, the GM crops on the market, there's 9 of them, and the primary traits are either herbicide tolerance or pesticide production. So herbicide tolerance, Roundup Ready is the most popular. Roundup Ready soy, corn, cotton, canola, sugar beets, and alfalfa. They're engineered with genes from bacteria and pieces of virus, etc., not to die. The plant doesn't die when it's sprayed with Roundup herbicide, which normally kills plants. So it makes weeding easier for farmers. They can simply spray over the crops and kill all the weeds, but not the Roundup Ready crops. And the other genetically modified trait that's popular is pesticide production. They take a gene from bacteria in the soil called Bacillus thuringiensis, or BT for short, and take that gene which produces a known insecticide and put it into corn and cotton. So when a bug, certain types of bugs, eat or try to bite the plant, the toxin gets released and then it breaks open little holes in their stomach walls and they die. So now we eat that insecticide and we also eat the Roundup-laden crops. So we're eating 2 types of poisons in these GM crops.
What we are doing, if we are modifying the genes in the plants to make them more resistant against bacteria, and what is digesting the food in our stomach and intestine? Bacteria. 2 kilograms of bacteria are in our stomach and intestine, and now you serve them the food which they can't use normally because these are protected by genetical approaches to avoid this destroying. And now new combinations of peptides are left in our stomach and our intestine and absorbed by our blood. Yeah? And then we don't know the interaction with the systems in our body.
When we're making plants that are like Frankenstein, that are not natural, that's where we get into trouble, because then we're playing God with nature and we don't know what kind of monsters we're actually going to create, or if our body can actually metabolize them, or if those combinations of genes are going to turn on other disease processes. There's too many unknowns.
We are all participants in a mass experiment. Pretty much unless you've been living in a cave somewhere or growing all your own food, you have consumed some GMOs at some point. I mean, they're only in 5 major food crops, but those food crops are so widespread. We're talking corn, soy, canola, sugar beets, and then, of course, cotton, which ends up in cottonseed oil. Right. But all of our restaurants virtually contain genetically modified organisms in their ingredient supply. So unless you never eat out at restaurants, you're probably being exposed to them. We do know with certainty that genetically modified organisms are leading to vastly increased use of Roundup, glyphosate, which has just been declared by the World Health Organization to be a likely carcinogen. We do know that they are leading to vastly increased use of 2,4-D, which is one of the 2 ingredients in Agent Orange, right? And which has been linked to a host of metabolic and health and neurological dysfunction, birth defects in large numbers. Right. We do know that when we spray these chemicals on our croplands, we wind up eating crops that have literally absorbed herbicide, which is unprecedented in human history, because always before, if you sprayed them on your crops, the crops would die. Right?
But
so now
we're
resistant crops. Right, we have resistant crops, so they're absorbing the herbicide, so we're consuming the herbicide. So what is the impact on human beings of consuming large amounts of glyphosate and 2,4-D and other toxic herbicides? I think it's pretty alarming.
Ocean just mentioned that glyphosate has recently been declared a probable carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Now, glyphosate is the main ingredient in Roundup. In this next clip from Jeffrey Smith, who's a renowned GMO researcher, and we recently learned on our quest, he explains why glyphosate actually causes cancer.
Roundup can promote cancer in many, many ways. First of all, it's an antibiotic, and it kills off beneficial gut bacteria, causing an overgrowth of the bad gut bacteria. Now, this overgrowth of negative gut bacteria is linked to certain cancers, colorectal cancer, for example. The overgrowth of negative gut bacteria can produce zonulin, which can create leaky gut. It opens the gaps in the cell walls on the intestines, and leaky gut is linked to cancer. Roundup also damages a set of enzymes called the CYP enzymes, which are part of the detoxification process, and CYP enzymes are linked to cancer. And one of the problems with Roundup is it can disable some of those enzymes that are involved with detoxification. So any toxic influence from the environment can be much more toxic when you're also exposed to Roundup or its active ingredient glyphosate. Through the gut bacteria overgrowth, it can promote inflammation in the gut, and inflammation is also linked to cancer. So Roundup has all these different ways, like a perfect storm.
The other thing that no one really talks about is glyphosate is patented in 1964 by a company called the Stauffer chemical company, and it was meant to be a chelator of minerals, trace minerals, magnesium especially. So what's happening is every person tested has some glyphosate typically running through them, depending on how they eat. But majority of people do, including mothers, including newborn babies. So what you're looking at is you're looking at going through your body as a sponge that pulls your minerals out of your body, pulls your magnesium out of your body. So, and this is coming from also soil that has glyphosate in it that takes up the magnesium. So there is a huge push for magnesium deficiency and people to supplement magnesiums, and that's one of the reasons this is happening right now. That also affects circulation, and it's been shown that magnesium. If we go on that subject for a second, it's been shown that it's low magnesium levels is also a probable carcinogen. Just having low magnesium levels. Supplementing magnesium with tumors shows tumor shrinkage. This is a huge thing when it comes to cancer. No one does this.
They irritate all our cells and destroy the membranes. This is another cause for let's say stomach or intestine cancer, colorectal cancer also.
It's amazing that we know that glyphosate causes cancer, and it's the main ingredient in Roundup, which is used on all the GMO corn and the soy, but the FDA does not require a single study to determine whether GMOs are safe. This is a result of a policy overseen by Michael Taylor in 1992 when he was at the FDA, and then he moved on over to Monsanto that produces these genetically modified crops, and he was their chief lobbyist and attorney, and now he's back with the FDA as the food safety czar. Now, because of the policy that was developed by Michael Taylor while he was at the FDA that GMOs are substantially equivalent to food, no testing is required. But is it really true that GMOs are substantially equivalent to food?
We have a situation where the claims in the policy that they weren't aware of information showing that GMOs were different was a complete lie. It was a total fabrication. The lawsuit forced 44,000 secret FDA memos into the public domain, and it showed that the overwhelming consensus among the scientists working at the FDA was exactly the opposite. They said GMOs might create allergens, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems, urged their superiors to require testing, complained about the drafts of the policy, and their concerns were ignored and even denied. And the tests that they do, tobacco science, completely rigged to avoid finding problems. We catch them red-handed.
Tobacco science. Jeffrey Smith just mentioned that term. Another example of tobacco science was the Seralini study of 2012.
In the finding by Professor Seralini, who ran his same study that Monsanto ran, that recently came out, it was supposed to be for 6 months, but actually only for 3 months. In that study, when he ran it for 2 years on the same rodents, what did he find? Well, he found liver and kidney damage beyond control group. He found 50% shorter life for males, 70% shorter life for females beyond the control group. This is GMO corn. And he found 200 to 300% increase in tumors.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, so check out what the rats look like after eating GMO corn.